Hey everyone, welcome to The Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here today. We are going to completely decode the biology of stress, figure out exactly where it's coming from by looking at 4 major categories, and, most importantly, equip you with some incredibly practical strategies to build real, lasting individual resilience. So if you've ever felt completely overwhelmed and thought, what on earth is actually happening inside my body right now? Well, you are in the exact right place. Let's get started. Okay, let's dive right into this. Picture this. You're an ancient human living in a cave, right? Your absolute biggest, most terrifying threat is a wild tiger. When you see one, your nervous system instantly triggers this massive fight-or-flight response just to keep you alive. Fast forward to today, that tiger has basically been replaced by gridlocked traffic, a screaming toddler, or some completely unrealistic work deadline. But here's the wild part. Your nervous system, it hasn't fully caught up to modern life. It genuinely doesn't always know the difference between a daily annoyance and a literal mortal threat.
So here's our quick roadmap for today's explainer. Number 1, the biology of stress. Number 2, the 4 categories of stressors. Number 3, disasters versus daily hassles. Number 4, problem versus emotion coping. And finally, number 5, building individual resilience.
All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, the biology of stress.
To really get a grip on the psychology of stress from an expert perspective, we actually have to look at the underlying biology first. Psychologists rely on Hans Selye's general adaptation syndrome to measure how our bodies respond, and it unfolds in 3 distinct steps. First up is the alarm reaction. This is when your HPA axis, your body's central stress response system, rapidly activates, just flooding your bloodstream with cortisol and adrenaline. Next is the stage of resistance. Your body's trying to defend itself and adapt. But if that threat doesn't go away, you're basically revving a car engine in neutral. You're just burning fuel. Finally, if you stay stuck in that resistance phase, you hit the critical stage of exhaustion. And this is severe. Your physiological resources are just totally depleted, your immune system crashes, and it opens the door to chronic anxiety, clinical burnout, and very real physical illness.
And this brings up a massive modern biological trap. The HPA axis can essentially hijack your brain. Because cortisol gives us this temporary burst of energy and laser focus, it can actually feel super productive in the short term. I mean, moderate stress can even trigger a dopamine release. But when you're constantly in this state, you can literally develop an unconscious addiction to cortisol. You might start craving that wired, high alert feeling, which leaves you completely unable to just sit back and relax without feeling super guilty or restless. Moving right along to Section 2, the 4 categories of stressors. In clinical psychology, experts break down the external sources of our stress into 4 main buckets, and understanding these is the very first step to spotting your own personal triggers. First, we've got crises and catastrophes. Second, major life events. Third, daily hassles and microstressors. And fourth, ambient stressors. Let's break down exactly how these differ and how they mess with our health. So psychiatrists Thomas Holmes and Richard Rahe developed this highly regarded scale to measure the physical impact of major life events. They assigned them life change units. Look at how things like the death of a spouse or going through divorce score incredibly high. These massive life changes just totally strip away our normal routines and create immense uncertainty. And here's the scary part. If your total score gets too high over a single year, your statistical risk of developing a serious illness practically skyrockets because of that prolonged biological load. Now, what's genuinely fascinating to me is the concept of ambient stressors. Unlike those massive, obvious life events, ambient stressors are global, low-grade, and they're just constantly humming in the background of your environment. Think about nonstop city noise, heavy air pollution, or a perpetually crowded subway commute. The crazy and honestly slightly terrifying thing here is that our mere physical surroundings can chronically trigger our stress response on a subconscious level without us even realizing it's happening. Okay, that takes us to Section 3, disasters versus daily hassles. This brings us to a huge revelation in stress research, comparing the absolute extremes. On one side, we have crises and catastrophes. These are massive, devastating events like natural disasters or pandemics. They are totally unforeseen, tragic, and literally completely out of your control. On the flip side, we have daily hassles, meeting a tight deadline, arguing with a coworker, or just sitting in stop-and-go traffic. While disasters are incredibly destructive, they are, thankfully, pretty rare for most of us. Daily hassles, on the other hand, they absolutely never stop. And here's the absolute kicker. Renowned researchers have found that those everyday microstressors actually have the strongest physiological effect on us, precisely because they happen so often. Longitudinal studies show a severe correlation between folks who view their daily hassles as highly intense and a much higher mortality rate. So it's not actually the traffic jam itself, it's how you perceive the traffic jam. That interpretation can literally modulate your immune system and alter your mortality risk over time. Wild, right? Which naturally leads us to section 4, problem versus emotion coping. Since our psychological perception matters that much, we have to talk about our coping mechanisms. Psychologists highlight 2 really adaptive ways to handle a threat: problem-focused and emotion-focused coping. Problem-focused means you are attacking the root cause head-on. You're planning, managing your time, changing the actual situation. Emotion-focused, though, is all about soothing your internal biological response through things like social support or mindfulness. So when do you use which? Well, the golden rule from experts is to use problem-focused coping when you actually have the power to fix the issue, and lean on emotion-focused coping when the situation is totally out of your hands and you just need to manage your own internal state. Both are absolutely vital. Finally, let's wrap up with section 5, building individual resilience. So now that we've got the framework, how do we actually make actionable daily choices to build up our hardiness? I absolutely love this framework from the Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction Handbook. Take a look at your daily tasks and sort them into 3 buckets. First, are they nurturing? Like, do they nourish and biologically ground you? Second, are they draining? Are they just rapidly depleting your emotional energy? Or third, are they mastery activities? These are things like scrubbing the kitchen floor that are definitely unpleasant in the moment, but feel highly rewarding once they're done. Your goal here is to consciously, mindfully increase those nurturing activities to balance out the draining ones. If you suspect you're currently trapped in one of those awful cortisol loops, here is a rapid-fire reset plan you can literally start today. First, get outside, get some natural morning sunlight to properly set your circadian cortisol rhythm. Next, gently cut back on caffeine and sugar. They just artificially spike your stress hormones. Most importantly, prioritize real rest without a single ounce of guilt. Rest is a fundamental biological need, you guys. It's not a reward you have to earn. Lean heavily on your friends and support systems. And if you need it, definitely try cognitive behavioral therapy to help professionally rewire those automatic physical responses.
And this right here is the absolute magic of neuroplasticity. We can physically alter our brain's neural pathways using cognitive reappraisal. So, instead of letting your brain just default into a state of panic, consciously change the words you use. When you feel your heart pounding before a big meeting, don't say, "Oh man, I am so stressed." Say, "This is activation energy." Studies show that simply labeling those feelings differently fires up your logical prefrontal cortex and actually dials down your amygdala's intense panic response. It shifts you from feeling totally anxious to feeling completely empowered.
If you take literally nothing else away from this explainer today, please remember this number: 3. Just 3 minutes is the exact amount of time you need for a mindfulness breathing space exercise. When you feel that fight or flight response firing up, taking just 3 minutes to pause, focus deeply on your breath, and just observe your thoughts without judging them, it can instantly soothe your nervous system and stop that overproduction of cortisol dead in its tracks. We have covered so much ground today. We decoded the biology, mapped out those external triggers, compared how we cope, and laid out the exact steps to build real resilience. So I'm going to leave you with this final thought. Are you consciously choosing to build your resilience, or are you letting those little daily hassles completely hijack your biology? The power to change that narrative is entirely in your hands. Thank you so much for hanging out with me for this explainer, and I will catch you next time.